Hello, friends, and a very warm welcome to you. Today, we're going to break down n8n, a really powerful tool that lets you automate just about anything, from simple everyday tasks all the way up to building some seriously complex AI agents. If you've ever dreamt of putting your digital life on autopilot, believe me, you are in exactly the right place.
Just think about that for a second. What if you could connect all of your apps, your email, your spreadsheets, your databases, and just have them work together automatically? Well, that is the promise of workflow automation, and it can literally save you countless hours of dull, repetitive manual work.
Okay, so let's jump right in. Here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the big picture. What is automation? Then we'll get our hands dirty inside the n8n dashboard. After that, the exciting part, we'll build our very first AI agent together. Then we'll cover some common mistakes you can avoid, and we'll wrap up by talking about the most important skill you'll learn: how to think in workflows.
So first things first, before we can start building anything, let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what automation really means in today's world. We're not talking about factory robots here. We're talking about automating all of our digital work, especially in this exciting new no-code environment.
Fundamentally, there are two main roads you can take to automate things. On one side, you have the traditional coding approach, writing scripts in languages like Python. It's incredibly powerful for sure, but it does require a lot of technical skill. And on the other side, you have no-code or low-code tools, which let you visually drag and drop different blocks to build out your automation.
And this is precisely where a tool like n8n finds its sweet spot. It's built to bridge this exact gap. It's simple enough that a beginner can jump in and start building powerful things visually, but it also has all the depth and flexibility that developers just love. Things like writing your own code snippets or even hosting the whole thing yourself for complete control.
Okay, so now let's actually go inside the n8n dashboard itself. I want you to think of this place as your new command center, your mission control, where you're going to design, manage, and watch over all of your automated processes. The real heart of the dashboard is something called the workflow canvas. It's basically your digital drawing board. This is where you'll visually map out every single step of your process. You'll drag components onto the canvas, and you'll connect them with little lines to show exactly how data should flow from the beginning to the end. So what are these components that you're dragging around? They're called nodes, and a node is simply one action. Think of it as a small machine that does one specific job. It could be sending a tweet, reading a spreadsheet, or calling an AI model. In simple terms, a node is one action. So how do you tell a node what to do? Well, that's where the configuration panel comes in. Anytime you double-click on a node, this little panel will pop open, and this is where you give it its instructions. For an email node, you'd put the recipient's address in here. For an AI node, you'd paste in your API key. It's how you control what that node does. And finally, what happens when things go wrong? Because they will. That's when you turn to the execution logs. This is like your workflows report card. It shows you step by step exactly what happened, which nodes worked, which ones failed, and what data was flowing through. It is absolutely critical for figuring out what went wrong. All right, now for the really fun part. We've seen all the building blocks, so let's actually use them to build our very first AI agent. This is where the true power of a tool like n8n really starts to shine. Now, building an AI agent, it sounds really complicated, I know, but it actually breaks down into a few very clear steps. First, you add an LLM. That's the brain of your agent, something like OpenAI's GPT or Google's Gemini. Second, you give it tools. These are the actions it can actually perform, like using a calculator or checking your Gmail. Third, you write a system message, which is its core set of instructions. Fourth, you add memory, so it can remember what you've talked about. And finally, for really advanced stuff, you can even combine multiple agents. Now, this is really important, so let's focus on the system message. This is your number one way to control the agent. You can tell it how to behave, what kind of format it should use for its answers, and, most importantly, which tools it should use for which jobs. So, for example, you can tell it very clearly, for any math problems, you must use the calculator tool. This stops the AI from just guessing the answer and forces it to use the precise tool that you've given it. Okay, as you start your building journey, you're bound to run into a few common hurdles. So let's quickly go over some frequent mistakes and a few pro tips that will help you level up your skills much faster.
Here are the 4 big ones I see all the time. First, thinking that no code means no logic. Not true. You still need to think through your workflow properly. Second, trying to automate a huge, complicated process all in one go. Please, start small and then build up from there. Third, confusing triggers, which are the things that start a workflow, with actions, which are the things that do the work. And finally, ignoring those execution logs. Seriously, when something breaks, the logs are your best friend.
All right, here's a question we see a lot from people who are starting to build. Once your AI agent has finished its task, is the workflow over? Can you add more steps after it? And the answer is a huge yes. In fact, the AI agent is often just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. After the agent generates a response, you can take that output and do almost anything with it. Save it to a Google Sheet, format it into a beautiful report, send it as a WhatsApp message, you name it.
Let's take it a step further now. What if a task needs more than one brain? Is it possible to have multiple AI agents, maybe even using different AI models, all working together inside a single workflow?
Absolutely. And this is where you can start to build some incredibly smart systems. I want you to think of it like hiring a team of specialists. You could have one agent that's really good and cheap at just researching data. Then it passes its findings to a much more powerful creative agent that's an expert in writing. This lets you use the right brain for the right job, saving both time and money.
And for our final pro-level question, what if you have a massive, really complex system? Is it possible to break it down into smaller, separate workflows and then have them trigger each other?
Yes, and you absolutely should. For any kind of complex automation, it's a very good practice to build in modules. You can have one workflow that handles one part of the process, and when it finishes, its result can kick off a totally separate workflow. This makes your automations so much easier to build, to fix, and to maintain over time.
So, as we wrap things up here, I want to talk about the most important thing that you have learned today. And believe me, it isn't just about a single tool.
This quote, I think, really gets to the heart of it all. n8n is not just a simple utility to connect one app to another. It's really a creative platform for building intelligent, AI-powered systems from the ground up.
And that brings us to the most important point of this whole explainer. By understanding these ideas, canvases, nodes, triggers, you've learned something far more valuable than just how to use n8n. You've actually learned how to see the world differently as a series of steps and triggers and actions. You have learned how to think in workflows. And that, my friends, is a skill that will help you solve problems and build amazing things, with or without any tool at all.